Hello, everybody. My name is Erik Anderson from AwardsWatch.com. Oh, he's already here. I was going to say, please welcome back to the stage, Evgeny Afineevsky.
Thank you. Thank you, Erik. Thank you.
He snuck up behind me. So first, I have to ask, how does a nice Jewish boy like yourself end up making a movie about a Catholic Pope?
Pope Francis actually don't like labeling people. And I guess if you will omit Jewish and the Catholic, we're all human. And I guess for me, it's more human to human. And that's what connected me to another human who is fascinating role model, fascinating inspiration. But I think more than this, he helped me to heal from the wounds that I absorbed through making Winter on Fire and Christ from Syria. And I think journey through him, through this world, along his side, next to him, observing things, good things that he was doing to people across the globe, allowed me to see hope in all this madness and in all this divided world of today. And I think that's what made me a nice boy, without Jewish, make a movie about another gentleman who is a great role model and a great human and a great humble and just trying to do something good in this world in today's dark days.
One thing that was really fascinating to me about this is we're almost the same age, I think. My Pope experience growing up was Pope John Paul II. I have a very Italian family. My great-grandmother had Jesus, the Pope, John F. Kennedy on the wall, just like it sounds. And the most accessibility there was to that Pope was the Pope-mobile. That was like such a wild, cool way to access him. But it was always a distance, and I never understood him or really heard from him or anything. And this Pope, Pope Francis, is so different. Why do you think? What makes him so accessible?
Accessible in what way? Because in one side we can see him close to the people, and he loves to be with the people. And if you will compare two different popes like him and Benedict, you can see how Pope Francis wants to be with the people. He recharges. He literally spending time with the people for him energizes him. And if we will look at the Pope Benedict, Pope Emeritus Benedict, who is more kind of drained from the interaction with the people, and for him recharging, it's walking through the Vatican gardens. So I think for Pope Francis, it's him. It's from his childhood, from him being priest on the streets of Buenos Aires, being close to the people. I think that's what is his accessibility, being with the people. And I will give you another example. When I started the project and Vatican didn't want to give me access to him, and only after a long journey on my own, I did got this access. Even when I reached to him, I remember how he said to me, Evgeny, I'm not an actor. I am a priest, and I'd rather be on the front lines with the people, helping to them, then I will be on the camera. And that's the remarkable, again, it's also a Jesuit education in him, but the most important, it's him being a priest serving people. So I think that's his accessibility as the servant of the humanity. That's how should I say. Now, in terms of being Pope and being accessible, he's guarded. I think I was creating the bridges that he's talking in the movie and breaking the walls that Vatican was creating around me, not to get to to him.
I think that's what it is, and it's just his willingness to talk about everything that is in this film, which is plentiful. Also, the entire element of climate change, which really kind of opens the story and its connection to economic and social status and refugees. How does he, or at least your impression of that, how does that work in concert with faith and the idea of science and faith, which are so often at odds with each other?
Literally, today is what? 2nd. On the 3rd, I think, of October, he had every head of every face on earth in Vatican, and they signed a document called Faith and Science as endorsement to all leaders who went to the climate change summit in Glasgow. So I think that's a revolutionary aspect in this Pope. But also, let's not forget that his education is science. And before he became priest, he was into the science. And he is in today's world, he is still scientist. And I will tell you something personal. When I was with him on this Saturday in Vatican, we were talking about COVID, and he was talking about research that he did as young person about COVID. And he said to me, Evgeny, but in that period of time, as a virus, COVID not was so dangerous when we were learning about this and studying this. And I was like, wait a minute, you were studying about this? And that's remarkable to hear this from the head of the Catholic Church and the Pope. And you hear a person talking science. And then we were talking about vaccination. He said, yeah, I'm doing the 3rd shot. And it's remarkable to hear this from the leader of the Catholic Church. But what is beautiful, he's definitely trying to bring science into the church and align two together. And not only that, he's trying to align every face on the earth together with the science, which is remarkable. And I think, for me, seeing that he is doing, not talking, because there is a lot of leaders and activists in our world who are just talking about climate change, but they're not doing anything. And that's what even Greta said. The leaders are coming together in the conversations and they talking, but where is the actions? Where is something that really happening? And I think what we're seeing, and again, I as a filmmaker saw in Pope Francis, he is doing things. He's trying from his position, using his platform to be this voice for our common home, which we call planet Earth. And I think it is important for him because it's all interconnected. It's all interconnected. The Earth, the climate change, the refugees. And he's using his platform to endorse and bring inspiration to do certain actions. And he is trying to encourage leaders to do the same.
I think that's exactly right, and I was thinking of that next, is that he's not just talking from a pulpit and say you should do this. He's doing the thing that he's asking people to do, and that was across the whole film in all the elements of it.
I want to tell you something interesting. When I was editing the movie, the climate change was the most difficult topic for me to connect with all others. I'm going right now a little bit into the more filmmaking process as a director, but the climate change is not the human subject. It's not a human story. And the rest of the stories are human. And for me to turn kind of corner into climate change was the most toughest thing, because when I was editing, I tried to put it not at the beginning, in the middle, before the pandemic, the cut that I had. And it was really tough because I found myself in a big way with the big question mark, how I can turn from human stories into unhuman story. And it's just not was working. And then when pandemic came, actually, it allowed me to focus on the climate change as the key point in history, and then step by step create this chain of all the events connecting each and everything. And it was remarkable because I started from unhuman situation into the humanity.
Absolutely, and as it's shown, the climate change moves people from country to country and creates refugees and creates these mass crises, and it's a perfect opportunity for somebody like him to speak to it, which is remarkable. One of the more, I have to say, shockingly surprising things in it is the frankness of the conversations about sexual abuse in the clergy and the history of that. And I don't think I've ever in my lifetime seen that level of transparency and honesty, especially coming from the head of the church. Why is that happening now?
I think transparency was from the day one he became Pope. One of the key things that I, as outsider of the church, as a Jewish, we can say here, as a Jewish boy who is not a Catholic, as what I observed, it's transparency that he's trying to bring. And through my journey of last 3 years, what I learned, Pope Francis bringing interesting things. It's transparency, it's women empowerment. Literally a few weeks ago, he named a woman on a most top position in the Vatican City. She is the second highest position right now in the governatorato of Vatican City. It's never happened. So he is endorsing women. He believes in women. He's trying to break this macho institution that was exist for the centuries, bringing tenderness of the women, bringing their sensitivity into this institution. And I guess it comes because of he been raised by his amazing grandmother. And that's what comes from her. Now, another element that I saw he brings also, besides these two, is lay people. Because he trying to break the stigma of the brotherhood inside of the system. And it's also fascinating. Of course, he have opposition. Of course, a lot of cardinals and bishops trying to fight him because they fear of change, because it's drastic change. But I think transparency not just came towards the sexual abuse, it was since he became Pope, because that's how he was raised, that's how he was living his life as the Jesuit, as a provincial, and when he became Pope, for him it's a part of him. And I think when he started to fight the sexual abuse inside of the church and take all these drastic measurements, for him transparency is a really key element to make people to understand and see what's happening. So he is remarkable in this thing. And what I witnessed, it was also remarkable. I have another question to the audience. Did you like the music? I want to tell you another story. There is another victim of sexual abuse in this movie that you not saw, but you heard. When I was during the summit that Pope arranged in Vatican, I met a guy, another Chilean. He was a victim of sexual abuse. He was born in Chile. He was sold as a kid by the Pinochet regime from Chile to Germany. In Germany, the parents who adopted him, they gave him to the boarding school, famous boarding school, where the brother of the former Pope Benedict was big director. And this kid was abused there. And he became very famous violin player. During the last day of the summit of sexual abuse in Vatican, he was talking to the bishops and to the Pope. And then he was very emotional, he was crying, and then he performed Bach on his violin. And I offered to bring his story to the big screen, like many other voices that I brought to this big screen. And he said, I don't think that I'm able to, because my expression is through the music, my healing through the music. And I offered him to come and record the entire score of this movie. And for him, it became healing process. I brought him in 2019 at the end to United States, and he was working with my composer on a score, and they recorded the entire score of this movie. And for him, it became a healing process. Yeah. Art can heal.
Yes.
Like this story was my personal healing out of the darkness, and for some victims, it became there. And I think for me, it was important, same like for all my team, to bring the voices, innocent voices of victims of sexual abuse, either through Juan Carlos Cruz or Manuel Drumsky through his music, or refugees that I met in different parts of the world, their voices. into the big screen, to bring this to bring their issues, their needs into the spotlight of the world.
Yeah, because they've been silenced for decades and decades, and this is one of the first times that they've had that opportunity, and the opportunity with him directly.
Absolutely.
Which is that, I mean, that whole sequence and conversation is remarkable. How did that even transpire?
You know, it's interesting because I started to do movie in 2018, and literally everything was unfolding in front of my eyes, which allowed me, A, to document everything, B, being a witness to things inside Vatican and outside of Vatican, and not only witness, but be a part of this. And I think that was a remarkable opportunity, which also trust of Juan Carlos Cruz and other victims allowed me, because they trusted me. Also, I think what was remarkable that Pope Francis allowed to open himself, his heart, and being openly straightforward on these explanations, how he operated in these moments of anger, or how he decided to clear this way and find the right direction, what change he decided to bring, and how sorry he is. I think each step was remarkable because each character, either Juan Carlos or Archbishop Cicluna or Pope Francis, they all kind of were quite open and straightforward on the camera, telling what they were feeling, their actions, their emotions, their feelings, their journey, and that was remarkable. And I think that's one of the favorite things in my movie, because it's a little bit personal, but in the same time, it's the most important thing that I feel people need to see, people need to learn, and in the same time, I wanted to give voice to millions of people who never been heard and who still fighting for bringing justice. And here, even Juan Carlos, I was talking to him a couple of days ago. He said, Evgeny, we still continue to fight. And Juan Carlos been appointed by Pope Francis to be on a commission in Vatican these days. He's in a commission in Vatican. So that's another remarkable action that Pope Francis took.
I think that example is one of the running themes through this, and really one of the running themes in all of your movies, is that even as serious and intense as they are, there's always a running theme of hope, always. And I think this does this for a tremendous amount of people.
But I think that's what I also was looking. Erik, remember, when I did Syria, Syria was the darkest side of humanity in front of my eyes. It was a journey into the darkest side of humanity. Going to Syria, and all the drone that you saw in Syria, in Aleppo, it's my drone, I've been there. And it's really was something that I experienced. Somebody who born in these days, but went voluntarily into the war and witnessed this war through the lens of his camera. And I think that was my trauma that I got. And that's where my nightmares, my suffering, and that's what brought me to Pope, because I was looking for opportunity for us, for people to see hope beyond all these damages that we created. Because war conflicts, we created them. And I think that's what brought me to him, because he trying to find different ways and solutions to these conflicts. He trying to create interface dialogue in order to stop many of these conflicts. And I think seeing this hope in a certain way, it's healed me. It's allowed me to see hope in my movies, through my lens, and through that bring this hope into the bigger world, to the audience that my movies are playing in front of.
One of the other very progressive things, and I feel like every couple of minutes in this movie was like one more progressive thing after another, and that was how he talks to and about LGBTQ people, which I almost by the end of this, I was a convert to Catholicism. It was just like, what is going on here? Did you have personal conversations with him about that and then obviously what we saw and what he's done recently?
Even recently, he said the same thing in September. Yes, we had a personal conversation because it also relates to me personally. As being former Russian and Israeli and Jewish and gay, for me, this subject matter was really personal. And I think multiple times Pope Francis said, I'm a priest and I need to care about every human life, no matter of the religious beliefs, no matter of the color of the skin, no matter of the sexual orientation. Everyone is a child of God, and I need to protect everyone. I need to make sure that nobody is discriminated. And that's why he really believes that the civil laws can protect people and gives them equal rights. He said it in front of the I think the full plane of journalists on 15th of September, where he said that the gay people, that our brothers, and we really need to create equal rights in order to protect them from discrimination. And it's a revolutionary thing for him, because I think he even not talking, he's doing things. I will give you example that not much people talking. During last year, 2020, during the pandemic, a priest from some Italian city wrote to him that there is a transgender community who usually were working on the streets, but because of pandemic there is a lockdown and they're starving. And you know what? Pope Francis sent them money. No talking, acting. He sent them his own money to support them. Because again, like he said, everyone is a child of God. Everyone is the life. It's a human life that he, as a priest, needs to protect. And that's remarkable in this person. And I think same relates to the LGBT community, because I'm showing the story of a family who created kids, who created through surrogacy kids, and were struggling with the faith, were afraid of bullying, and he helped them. And that's what important for him, to embrace every life, to embrace every human being, to support everybody. And that's why, for me personally, it was really close to my heart. As you know, I am a single dad right now. I just had a son 2.5 months ago as a single father. Yeah. Thank you.
He's adorable.
Yeah. And I think that's another aspect that changed my life, because I was seeing how much great support and love he's spreading around. You know what? I can tell you interesting thing. When I'm thinking about this movie, for me it became antidote to the darkness of today's world. And I think that's what it is. And civil union, women endorsement, women empowerment, all these equality things. It's amazing revolutionary aspects of papacy of Pope Francis.
Here's a slightly lighter question along for tonight. What does the Pope do when he's not poping? I mean, I kind of feel like he would be like really good at Words with Friends or something. What does he do?
I think he's doing a lot of stuff for the humanity. I not saw him resting. Even when he have his official hiatus or holidays, he's still working. He's still receiving heads of the states. He's still doing different behind-the-scenes things for the different parts of the world, trying to help people in a conflict zone, or refugees, or he going to visit hospitals, or poor people. He's non-stop working. I think I never saw him resting. Even in his days off, he's still working. Because that's his mission. He's here to serve people, not people serving him. He's serving people. I will give you an example. Every time I was with him, he opens to your door, and I was raised in former Soviet Union that elderly should be coming first, and then you kind of. No, He wants you to go first. He gives you respect. And then he goes to the room, switches the light, and then gets out and closing the door. That's him. That's remarkable human being, Jorge Maria Bergoglio. Simple and humble.
Indeed. It's surprising how much you're able to cover in this less than 2 hours, but I also know that the original cut was 6 hours long. What can you share that was not in this that maybe be worth talking about?
There is a lot of stories that
6 hours.
Yeah, that we trying to put onto Blu-ray and DVD. You know, this Pope loves football, and he loves San Lorenzo team. Now, since 1978, he's not watching TV at all. You can show him stuff on a computer, you can show him stuff on an iPad, but he will not sit and watch movie or TV. I was showing him parts of the movie on an iPad all the time. There is interesting story that I'm really preserving. Why I started to talk about sport. He hosted in Santa Marta a team of rugby, but not just team of rugby. It's a team of prisoners from Argentina. And it's an interesting story because he gave them interesting inspirational quote. He said, you know what, guys? You're running on a field as the players, and you can fail. And if you will continue to lay on the ground, your team will lose. But if you will stand and continue to run, your team win. So it means we all can be a failure sometimes. But what is important, not to continue being this failure, to really rethink what you're doing and continue a movement, progressing your movement. And it's interesting how this specific message resonated with, had a different kind of meaning to all of these guys. And there is a couple of different stories about the different kids, different prisoners, how they really applied this message to their lives. This one, then there is a beautiful story on a kid, 7-year-old kid who was crying on the shoulder of Pope Francis. When he was 5, Emmanuel, his dad died, and his dad was atheist. And a teacher, and the kid was baptized. Kid was really Catholic. And it was 4 kids together. In Emmanuel's school, the teacher said, everyone who is atheist will go to hell. For the poor kid, it was really, really horrible thing because he loved his dad. And losing his dad, it was trauma already. So he came to Pope in one of the papal audiences when Pope came to the parish on the poor areas of Rome. And in front of people, he asked Pope about this. Did my father went to hell? And Pope turned this question to the audience, to the people, and said, how come such a great man who raised such a great kid, baptized him, can go to hell? Do you think it will happen? And the audience said, no, he will definitely be close to the Father, to the God. And Pope Francis turned to Emmanuel and said, you see, your father is close to God. He's in heaven. And I remember my conversation with Emmanuel and with the mother, and I asked him, I said, did Pope, how you felt after that? And Emmanuel said, he comforted me. And then I had a conversation with the mother, and mother told me interesting thing. She said, Pope Francis came to her and said, we need to stop think black and white, because the world is much wider and full of colors. And many, many more stories.
Well, we'll look for the Blu-ray on that. I think it's hard not to ask questions about COVID during this period and what the production process was like for you. Can you go into a little bit of what that was?
I was sick twice with COVID. Once, first time at the beginning of 2020 in February, and then second time in November. I was lucky that I've been able to fly abroad and continue filming of the movie, because you saw empty streets of Rome, empty streets, you saw empty St. Peter, which I will tell you something, it's never empty, specifically when Pope is there. For me, the first scene was the most memorable and haunting, and I think shaking to the ground. It was not easy because it was a lot of limitations already on the ground. Italy was on lockdown, it was tough to move. But for me, it was really important to capture this moment in the history, because for me, it was the moment of kind of moment no return. It's not was that I was thinking, okay, the life will continue as it was. No, I was realizing that we are going to start a different page in the history of the world. And I wanted to capture this moment of this line between past and present, and allow audience to see how we can rethink everything what you saw in these 2 hours that we created before, and how with completely different perspective we can be living in the future. I think the most important thing that I learned during the pandemic, how we can stop being victims of our past and become heroes of our future. And for me, it was really important to document this moment in the history, to document it with these great visuals when we can see him in his white dress going under this rain, in this darkness, which for me, it's like end of the world and the human race has disappeared and he's alone walking there. And just to think about this, you're thinking, is it reality or is it something surreal? But it can become reality if we will not stop paying attention to science, if we will not stop paying attention to the harsh reality that COVID teaches us. Respect the science. So I think that's moments were really essential for me and important to bring it from the streets of the world to show how in one moment we went back into millions of years back into the caves. We as human race went back into the caves, and our tyrannosaur, like you said it was COVID who pushed us in. So I think it was challenging, but like I love challenges. I've been in a war zone, so here I've been again on a war zone with the invisible enemy, and I remember how I was proud of this moment because that moment needed to be documented. And for me as documentarian, it was a challenge, but I also loved one thing. Do you remember end of the movie? I learned how we, at certain points, can start to appreciate small things. This clapping for me means so much because all of a sudden, all the world started to appreciate people who were on the front lines fighting for our lives. And all of a sudden, we became again united in this moment. Something small but beautiful. And that's why, for me, COVID became, yes, it's difficult, but it was incredible moments of seeing a great moments of humanity that slowly started to come up.
Well, that's beautiful.
Thank you.
I do want to ask about what you might have coming up next, and I'm a little curious because you've done narrative features in television before. Are you possibly ever going back into that, or are you in documentary mode?
Right now, I'm definitely in documentary mode because there is a lot of opportunities to tell stories and educate people. I think with us living in a bubble of that media created and coming out of pandemic, I think we as documentary filmmakers, we have this incredible opportunity to go outside, to document things that we're not seeing every day in our media outlets, that media outlets just not covering or covering in bits and pieces. And I think what for me as a filmmaker is important to continue my ability to be storyteller, to document and bring it to the people to educate them. Because we as a filmmakers, we have ability to tell the complete story, comprehensive story, and to have beginning, middle, and end where we can educate people on that, and not just like media brings bits and pieces and we sometimes just lost. And again, media is sometimes even not bringing these stories. I'm curious, how many stories from this movie you were familiar and how many of you learned something new? How many learned something new? You see? Thank you, guys. Thank you. No, and that's why I think there is a mission for us, documentary filmmakers, to go, because we not have boundaries, that's number one. Number two, we not obeying by certain rules of the networks. So for us, this freedom of artists, freedom of speech is really important. And this ability to be a storyteller and bring something new to our audience, educate them, and make them to see things as they're happening, I think that's a remarkable award for us as a filmmakers, because we see the change, we're able to bring the change. And we're able to bring education that we started this evening. Yes. It's released already on Discovery Plus.
It's on Discovery Plus, and then the Blu-ray is
Blu-ray,
maybe
DVD, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon, March 2022.
Evgeny, thank you so much for bringing your film, and thank you everybody for watching it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks.